I was working the front desk at a hostel in Sydney when an American guy checked in and immediately asked where the nearest Starbucks was. I told him there's one about 15 minutes away in the CBD. He looked confused and asked what CBD meant. I explained it's the Central Business District. He laughed and said, "Oh, you guys call it that too. I thought only America had business districts." I just stared at him. He was completely serious. He then asked if Australian Starbucks accepted US dollars because he didn't want to deal with toy money. When I explained he'd need Australian dollars, he asked what the exchange rate was. I told him. He pulled out his phone calculator, did some math, and said, "So Australian dollars are worth less. Why don't you guys just use real money?" I pointed to the currency exchange across the street. He said he'd rather just tip extra in USD and have them figure it out. If you're into stories that actually show how culture clash plays out in real life, not just headlines, this is what I do every week. Most people scroll past surface-level takes. You're still here. That says a lot. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That same week, a woman from Texas asked me why Australians drive on the wrong side of the road. I explained it's the left side, and it's actually the standard in many countries. She said that didn't make sense, because America has more people, so majority should rule. I asked her if she knew the population of India or the UK. She said that was different. And that was just Tuesday. I work at a bottle shop in Melbourne, and an American tourist came in asking for a case of beer. Simple enough. I showed him our selection. He picked up a carton of VB and asked why it said "Stubby" on the label. I explained that's what we call the bottles. He looked at me like I was joking. He said, "No, what's actually in here? What's a stubby?" I repeated that it's just our word for beer bottles. He opened the carton and examined one of the bottles. He held it up and said, "This is just a regular bottle. Why are you calling it something weird?" I told him it's just Australian slang. He asked if I was pulling his leg because of his accent. He put the carton back and said he'd find a normal store that doesn't make up words for marketing. The next day, a different American asked me for a lager. I showed her the entire section. She said, "No, just a regular lager, like a normal beer." I explained all the options were lagers. She insisted American lager was different, and that Australian beer probably couldn't compare. She said her dad owned a bar in Wisconsin, so she knew beer. I suggested she try a local brew. She asked if it was FDA approved. I explained the FDA is American and doesn't regulate Australian products. She asked what agency approves our beer then. I said the TGA and local standards. She wanted to see certification. I'm a bottle shop worker, not a regulatory inspector. She left saying Australian beer seemed sketchy. Orti Dirtider Eichern had an American couple come in looking for White Claw. I explained. We don't carry that specific brand, but we have plenty of hard seltzers. The guy said, "But White Claw is American. You guys must have it because everyone drinks it." I showed him 4 different Australian seltzer brands. He examined each one and said they looked like knockoffs. His girlfriend agreed and said they probably didn't taste the same because they weren't made with American water. She was dead serious. She asked if Australian water was filtered. I told her our tap water is perfectly safe. She said they only drink American, bottled water because it's pure. They bought nothing and said they'd try to find an American import store. This level of unfiltered absurdity doesn't just happen once. It's a pattern. And I track these cultural blind spots full-time so you don't have to. Most channels mock the moment. I map the mindset. If that difference clicks for you, you already belong here. White Claw isn't even that old of a brand. I'm a waitress at a cafe in Brisbane, and this American family sat down for breakfast. They took about 20 minutes deciding what to order. When I came back, the dad ordered biscuits and gravy. I politely explained we don't serve that here. He looked shocked. He said, "What do you mean?" "It's breakfast." I suggested he try our menu items instead. He asked if we could make it anyway, because it's not hard. I explained our kitchen doesn't have those ingredients prepared. He asked what's so difficult about biscuits and gravy. I explained in Australia, biscuits are cookies, and we don't typically serve gravy at breakfast. He looked at his wife like I was insane. He said, "Cookies and gravy? Who would eat that?" I clarified that's not what I was suggesting. He asked to speak to the chef. Our chef came out. The American explained he wanted American biscuits with sausage gravy. Our chef, a bloke from Perth, said we don't make that. The tourist said surely we had flour and milk. Our chef said of course, but he's not running a custom order kitchen. The American offered to tip extra if we made it. Our chef explained we don't really do tipping culture here, and regardless, it's not on the menu. The guy asked why we were being so difficult. His teenage son said, "Dad, just order something else." They eventually ordered smashed avocado on toast. When it arrived, the dad asked where the guacamole was. Later that shift, an American woman asked me why the coffee sizes were wrong. I asked what she meant. She pointed at the menu and said, "You have piccolo, flat white, long black. Where's small, medium, large?" I explained those are different types of coffee, not sizes. She said Starbucks uses sizes, so why don't we? I told her this isn't Starbucks. She said she understood that, but sizes are universal. I explained Australian cafe culture has different naming conventions. She asked if I could just tell her which one is like a medium coffee. I suggested a flat white. She said that sounds too fancy and asked what's in it. I explained it's espresso with steamed milk. She said, "So a latte?" I told her it's similar but with different ratios. She asked why we complicate things. She ordered a long black, assuming it was just black coffee. When it arrived, she said it looked watered down and asked for a refill. I explained that's how long blacks are made. She left a 1-star review saying, "We don't know how to make American coffee." I had another American couple sit outside and complain about the birds. We have ibises around Brisbane, and they're pretty bold. One walked near their table. The guy actually yelled at it to shoo. I told him they're harmless, just curious. He said in America they'd never allow aggressive birds near restaurants. His girlfriend said they should call animal control. I explained the ibises live here and are protected. He asked who protects the customers. I said just don't feed them, and they'll leave you alone. He insisted the restaurant should do something. I brought their food out. An ibis walked closer. He stood up and tried to chase it away. It didn't move. His girlfriend took a photo and said she was reporting us to health authorities. The ibis just stared at them. Welcome to Brisbane. I drive for Uber in Sydney, and I picked up an American tourist heading to Bondi Beach. Nice enough guy at first. About 5 minutes into the drive, he asked why we were going the wrong way. I told him we were heading east toward the coast. He pulled out his phone and said, "No, we should be going west. That's where beaches are in California." I explained we're in Australia, and the geography is completely different. He zoomed in on his map and insisted I was taking him the long way. I showed him on my GPS that this was the direct route. He said GPS can be wrong and that he had a good sense of direction. I told him to trust me. I drive this route daily. He asked if I was padding the fare. I explained Uber calculates the price automatically. He said he'd be watching the route carefully. When we arrived at Bondi, he seemed surprised it was actually there. He got out and then asked why the water looked different. I asked what he meant. He said the ocean was on the wrong side. I explained ocean direction depends on where you are on the coast. He said in America, the Pacific is on the left when you face the water. I told him that's because he's on the west coast facing west. Here, we're on the east coast. He thought about it and said, but we're both on the Pacific. I confirmed that's correct. He said then it should look the same. I explained the Earth is round. He paid the fare, but seemed genuinely confused why Australian beaches faced backwards. The next day, I picked up an American woman going to the airport. She asked how long until we reached the international terminal. I said about 25 minutes depending on traffic. She asked why it takes so long. I explained Sydney's airport is in Mascot, which is several kilometers from the city center. She said LAX is close to downtown LA. I didn't argue with her geography of a city I've never been to. She then asked if we'd pass through any other countries on the way. I paused and asked what she meant. She said Australia is small, so she thought maybe we'd cross a border. I explained Australia is a continent and a country. She said she knew that, but she thought maybe there were smaller countries inside it. I asked if she meant territories. She said sure, like how Texas has counties. I explained that's not how it works. She seemed embarrassed and changed the subject. She asked if I'd ever been to America. I said no, but I'd like to visit someday. She said I should because it's the greatest country on earth. I nodded politely. She asked if we had 4th of July in Australia. I said no, that's an American holiday. She said we should celebrate it anyway, because freedom is universal. I asked if she celebrated Australia Day. She asked what that was. I explained it's our national day. She said that's nice, but probably not as important as Independence Day. I dropped her off. She tipped me in US coins. I work at a pharmacy in Perth, and an American guy came in with a prescription from his US doctor. He handed it to me and asked how long until it was ready. I looked at it and explained I can't fill American prescriptions. He asked why not. I told him Australian pharmacies operate under Australian regulations, and I need a prescription from an Australian doctor. He said his doctor is licensed in America, so it should count. I explained medical licenses don't transfer internationally like that. He said he'd been taking this medication for years and just needed a refill. I sympathized, but said he'd need to see a local GP first. He asked how much a doctor visit costs. I estimated between $80 and $100 for a standard consultation. He looked outraged. He said in America with his insurance, it's just a $20 copay. I explained he's not in America and probably doesn't have Australian health coverage. He asked if he could just pay me directly to fill it. I explained that's illegal and I could lose my license. He said he wasn't going to tell anyone. I told him that's not how pharmacy regulations work. He pulled out his phone and showed me his prescription history from his pharmacy app back home. He said, "See, I clearly need this medication. Just give me a month's supply." I repeated I legally cannot do that. He asked to speak to the head pharmacist. I was the head pharmacist. He asked if there was someone above me. I said sure, the Pharmacy Board of Australia, who would revoke my license if I did what he asked. He called me unhelpful. He said Australian healthcare was backwards if they couldn't honor American prescriptions. I suggested he use a telehealth service to speak with an Australian doctor who could write a new prescription if appropriate. He asked if the doctor would speak English. I told him we speak English in Australia. He said, yeah, but like real English? He left, saying he'd just skip his medication until he got home in 2 weeks. I called after him that he should really see a doctor if it's important. He waved me off. His medication was for high blood pressure. Look, Australians are generally pretty patient with tourists. We understand traveling is confusing, and different countries have different ways of doing things. But there's a difference between being confused and being confidently incorrect. When you roll into another country assuming your way is the only way, you're going to have a rough time. If this kind of grounded storytelling helps you see the world a little sharper, this is just one of many. I break these cultural blind spots down every week. Subscribing doesn't help me. It helps you not miss the next perspective shift. And when you double down insisting everyone else is wrong, you're not going to make many friends. And somewhere right now, another American is explaining to a confused Australian why they should switch to Fahrenheit, because it makes more sense.